Welcome to Compassionate Conversations. The goal of our podcast is to explore topics related to serious illness, and Core Compassionate Care exists to be a supportive presence for life's journey. We can provide care and support wherever a patient may be on their journey with a serious illness. And Core Compassionate Care began as Hospice of Rockingham County in 1987. While our name changed in late 2023, we are still the local provider the community has always known. We'll always be there because we've always been here. Welcome to this edition of Compassionate Conversations. The last couple of episodes, we've been talking about the act of caregiving. Certainly, being a caregiver is a very selfless act. It's an act of love. But as we've talked about recently, we've uncovered what we have called some of the hidden weight of caregiving. Because even though it's an act of love, it comes with its own unique stressors. We've also talked about resiliency and caregiving, how a caregiver can strengthen that resiliency and why that's important. So today we're going to continue the conversation about caregivers, but specifically talking about when a caregiver needs to ask for help, how they can ask for help, and where they can find that help. So Sarah Dugarte is joining me today. She is one of our wonderful social workers here at Core Compassionate Care. Thanks for being here.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Honored to be here.
So caregiving, Sarah, we know can be extremely overwhelming. You do a lot of great work with our families, with our caregivers. And I think sometimes people that are caregivers think they've got to do absolutely everything themselves. Why do you think it's so hard to ask for help sometimes?
I think there's many reasons. Caregiving is one of the most loving and exhausting things a person can do.
Yeah.
And it's not just physically tiring, literally, but it's also emotionally draining. I think people have expectations of themselves that are unrealistic. There's many reasons why it's hard for them to ask for help. It could be guilt, feeling that they should be able to do it on their own. And that kind of goes into, if I can't do it on my own, I'm not capable. And that becomes kind of an identity crisis. It also can be control. I think, especially with the work we do with hospice, there's so many things that are outside of people's control.
Absolutely.
I mean, the diagnosis, the prognosis, someone's decline, that it's easy for people to want to cling on to control, any control that they do have,
right?
Which in this case usually is caregiving. And so they want to control every aspect of it because that's really all that's left to be controlled.
Right. That makes total sense.
So that's one thing. I also think that maybe expectations from seeing someone else be able to do it alone. But the thing they don't see is the physical consequences that person might have faced,
right,
that they didn't experience. And just because it was done doesn't mean it was great for that person.
Right.
And also, last thing, sorry.
No.
I think our society is, it's very individualized, as we know. And that it takes a village phrase. Society strips the village.
Yeah.
Everybody is expected to have their own life, their own car, their own house. We don't share things with family anymore. And so when it comes time that we do need our family, it's harder to ask because of society. And the fact is, we're not supposed to do it alone. We weren't meant to do it alone. We are supposed to be in a village with our family and friends doing this thing together.
You know, you mentioned something that is so interesting and I think is so true, that people think if I can't do this all by myself and do it well, it kind of goes back to then I'm not good enough. So it goes back to the unrealistic expectations, I think.
Yeah.
But that really takes a toll, like you said, physically and emotionally. So there's a difference, though, I think, between what would be considered normal stress that would be related to caregiving. You know, a lot of what you were talking about, especially what we see with our hospice patients, just the prognosis alone is stressful, right?
Oh, yeah.
Just the knowledge that somebody that I love, somebody that I care about is sick. which is what's put me in this caregiver role to begin with. But talk a little bit about how can a caregiver recognize what is normal stress versus, hey, I got to have some help. This is essential.
Yeah, so like you said, stress is definitely to be expected.
Yeah.
We wouldn't expect it not to be. But I think when stress becomes constant with no recovery time, that's when help becomes essential. I think a great question to ask is this situation sustainable for long term? Because you don't know how long you're going to have to keep this up. So if you're in a situation, if you can look a month ahead and be like, am I still going to be able to do this for a month?
Right.
If you can't, then if you don't think you'll be able to, that's a sign that you should go ahead and get help secured.
Okay. Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It does. That makes total sense. So normal stress with caregiving, I would think maybe you've got to get adjusted to the patient's schedule. That might have been different from your own, right?
Yeah.
So things like that would be normal stress. Maybe keeping up with appointments that are not your own, so you haven't been used to doing that.
Yes.
Do you see in your work with families, though, are you able to see, or maybe the nurse able to see, signs of when somebody needs to ask for help before the person themselves actually see that? Like before, do you recognize when you think, gosh, I think they need a little more support before they're even seeing it in themselves?
Yeah, I think sometimes. I think so, yes. Maybe some at my visits, maybe like increased anxiety or maybe even frustration or irritability towards the patient, which is a sign that kind of happens before burnout, that they can maybe catch in themselves.
Right.
But also I do see that sometimes at the visit. If they're feeling resentful, sometimes they'll tell me that. Or if they're, or even being withdrawn, not really wanting to talk about it.
Right. So sleep deprivation, decision fatigue, things like that we've talked about in the last couple of episodes, but that certainly are signs that can kind of lead up to burnout. And it's like, hey, I got to have some help. So when you're recognizing things like that in your visits, what do you tell families? Like, what's a good way for them to start the conversation with their own family or friends asking for help?
So I think it's good to have a way to ask that's very specific, rather than just coming at a family member or friend like, I can't do this anymore, which is human and fine. But saying something like, I love caring for mom or whoever, but I can't do this alone. And could you help with fill in the blank specifics, Tuesdays, afternoons?
Got it.
Picking something up at the pharmacy. I think that's the number one tip when asking for help is to be specific, because we know people love to offer help, and they do it all the time, honestly. Anything I can do? You need anything? You need anything? Anything I can do for you?
Let me know.
You let me know if I can do anything.
That's
and
right.
they run out the door.
Yeah, exactly.
But sometimes people do mean it and they truly don't know what to do. And in that moment, it's easy to say, no, we're good, because you can't think of what do we need to do again? And I don't know how to work through the logistics of receiving the help. So I think asking for clear ask is better than big overwhelm. One idea that I had seen before, which I've told people, is if you have a lot of people coming in and out of your home, like neighbors, family, friends, which some people do, it's great to have just a list. If you want to just go ahead and write down a list, it can be stuff that you would like to have done that you think yourself you're going to do them all yourself. Just go ahead and write it down. It could be little stuff or big stuff. Walking the dog, pharmacy, grocery store, cleaning the room, whatever.
Yeah. Maybe even throwing in a load of laundry.
Yeah.
Anything.
Just put it in big and small, because then when someone is over there and anything you need, you can say, well, if you do have a second, I have a list ready. And you can pick something off the list. And if they have 5 minutes, they can check the mail. If they have 30, they can
go pick up
go
meds
to the
at
store.
the pharmacy. Yeah.
So I loved that idea, just to have that list ready, because the biggest tip really overall is just don't say no to help.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that I love that, the specifics, and I love the list. I've never even thought about that before. But something, so the list can be kind of an ongoing thing that they can keep at home, but it's like
They probably already have it in their head.
Exactly. And as soon as you think of it, just go right back to your little notepad where you're keeping it. Because what I have heard from caregivers before, especially if they do have a lot of people in and out of the house, they're grateful for the support, but then it almost feels like I'm caregiving and now I kind of have to entertain,
Yeah.
so to speak, at the same time. So they're not going to think of something specific if it's not already written down.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So when you think about our team that comes into the home, particularly with hospice, so you've got this whole team of people there to support the patient and the family, but how can the caregiver start talking to either their doctor or our care team about their own needs without feeling guilty? Is that something that maybe the social workers and the chaplains might initiate that conversation?
Yeah, I think it's good for caregivers to remember that our team sees a caregiver as part of the patient care plan, because if the caregiver is so important, I mean, if the caregiver it burns out, then the whole system suffers. Like, the patient is going to feel that too. So if you're struggling and wanting to share that with the team, we do not see it as complaining, but rather like that's the collaboration that we have going. So we're all together. And advocating for yourself is also advocating for the patient.
That's a huge point, because I think that's where some folks may feel selfish, or, I can't talk about what I need because this is about mom or it is about dad. But that's a huge point right there.
Yeah, they're a vital role there.
Do you ever have times where you have an opportunity maybe to make a joint visit? Let's say the nurse is taking care of the patient, so you can pull the caregiver aside and have some support that way?
Yes, we do. That's a great opportunity because a lot of times it is all about the patient, oftentimes, especially if they have symptoms that are coming up or they're worried about them. They want to talk about the patient a lot. So it's great to have a moment to step aside. And I do try to ask them pretty often, like, how are you?
Right.
Because this is a lot.
Right.
And they're affected, I mean, pretty greatly.
Sure. Absolutely. So when you're talking to them, you're having those conversations. Let's say somebody has confided in you that, hey, I'm really kind of struggling and need a little extra support. What community resources are available for people?
Yes, so there is quite a list. I'm going to have one to give you so we can have specifics.
Yep.
There's a lot of local things. One thing I was going to mention was respite, just a go-to situation. If you do have hospice and you do have Medicare covered respite, it's 5 days across the board, right?
It is. It is 5 consecutive days. They would come here to Gibson House.
Yes, but even if it's another hospice,
yes,
right?
that is correct. It is 5 consecutive days.
But here, 5 days here at the Gibson House. And that is a way for caregivers to be able to care for themselves. They need to do appointments. I have some caregivers that try to schedule it out so that their person can come here and they can get all their appointments and errands done that week. There's also, if someone is not on hospice, some assisted living facilities and nursing homes will let you pay you do have to private pay, but you can private pay for respite as well. For a month. So that's a fun fact as well.
Yeah.
If someone's in a position where they can do that and they need that. We also, we have churches in the community that hold various support groups. I have a couple different people who are involved with church support groups. I can add those to the list, the ones that I know of in this area. But if you're not in this area, I would say it's a fairly common support group. I think that's fair to say at churches.
And if you've never been to one, what would a caregiver expect from a support group? What are you looking for them to get out of that?
Yeah, so it's really great to have a space when you're with others who are experiencing the same thing as you. because sometimes when you try to share what's going on with someone who can't relate, it's a little bit difficult because they may not grasp the weight of it all.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's good to have someone else who's in that same situation. So it's really a time where I would say most support groups are kind of discussion based. There'll usually be a facilitator. Maybe she'll give some prompts, some education,
Mm-hmm.
and then you guys will talk about that. I do want to mention that it is a great thing, but it's also not for everyone.
Right.
So do not feel guilty if you go a couple of times and you don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's another thing about it is that you don't be scared to try it.
Right.
If it's a 10-week thing, you don't have to
You don't have to commit to the
but you
whole
can
deal.
try it. I would encourage everybody to try it.
Yeah.
There's smaller ones, larger ones. They have them virtual, in person, weekly, biweekly, monthly. So there's a lot of variations.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I would imagine that there would be almost like a common bond that's like, hey, I'm not the only one that's experiencing this. I'm not the only one that's had this thought or had
There
this
is.
feeling. And that in itself, in my mind, would have to be a huge support if I were in that position.
It is. It's
Yeah.
great to see at the events we've had when a couple people might relate, maybe their spouse or whoever has the same diagnosis.
Right.
So it's great for them to be able to say, oh, you're experiencing that too.
Yeah.
And another thing I want to say about support groups is you don't have to be falling apart to join.
Right.
It's preventative. It's a preventive intervention. It's not like reactive. You can join now, even if things are going well as they could. You can still join.
Well, that's a good point,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of get that support before it becomes a crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay.
And that might prevent some crises too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. Well, in thinking about, we've talked about resiliency in the past, but certainly support groups, being able to ask for help, having those specific lists, all of those could also add to strengthen their own resiliency so they can keep on keeping on.
Yes.
Because again, we don't know a time frame typically as to how long somebody's going to be in this caregiver role.
Right.
Right. So we have one thing, if you want to mention this, that's coming up as far as caregiver support.
Yes. So I've been trying to do, me and a couple others have been trying to put on some, I'm calling it Caregiver Circle. It's been a quarterly event, and our next one is going to be in March. And it's going to be a caregiver's brunch. I want a space where people can come and kind of drop their shoulders a little bit, and just enjoy themselves a little bit. Because caregivers don't get to have a lot of fun sometimes. Right. So I do want it to be a fun space, but also a space where you can connect with others, like we're saying, and also a space where you can maybe learn something. So we do try to have an education piece as well. Sometimes a little craft. So it's a good time, and I would encourage anybody who's in the area to come out. Whether or not you have our services or not, you're welcome to come. Mm-hmm. And we'd be glad to have you. This next one is March 18th. It's going to be at 11.
Right. So, Sarah, if there's a caregiver listening right now today, and they feel like, hey, I may be approaching my limit, I'm feeling stretched a little thin, what's the first step they should take right now?
I think the first step is really acknowledging that you do need help, because caregiving is not really a solo job. Sustainable caregiving requires shared responsibility. Mm-hmm. So just acknowledging that it's nothing personal doesn't mean you're not capable. Mm-hmm. It just is not for one person. I think that's the first thing to acknowledge. And then after that, if you don't have anyone around you, the next step would be to tell someone, whether it's the hospice team, a family member. And going back to that phrase we said, I love caring for her, for him, but I can't do this alone. Mm. I think that's the number one step, acknowledging that and also saying that.
So let's normalize getting rid of unrealistic expectations of ourselves.
Yes.
That would go a long way.
Easier said than done.
Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. But with support and with that care team there in the home, hopefully we make it a little bit easier for people.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you joining me for this conversation.
Yes. Thank
And
you.
I hope you all have learned some things about the act of caregiving, how to build that resiliency. Now you know when to ask for help, how to ask for help, and we'll have a fabulous list of resources for you in ways that where you can find that help. If you'd like any more information, you can always call us at Ancora Compassionate Care at 336-427-9022.